Welcome to Eternal Manna, the daily devotional broadcast of Grace Gospel Church. We have been looking at Psalm 59. And in Psalm 59, David gives us a very detailed description of his enemies. And then David maintains his innocence. He says, I have done nothing wrong. And then David gives us a description of his God, which he always loves to do. And today, we want to look at David's prayer. David's prayer primarily is against his enemies. They were actually not his enemies, they were the enemies of God. These enemies of God couldn't get at God. So they get at God's man, who happens to be David. So as we look at Psalm 59, we can see these arrow prayers that David prays to his God. In verses 1 and 2, he prays for deliverance. Deliver me. In verse 1, he prays for protection. Protect me from those who rise up against me. And then in verse 1, he prays that God would save him from bloodthirsty men. These were men whose intent was to kill David. They were out for his blood. So he is praying for deliverance, for protection, for salvation. And in verse 4, he prays, arise to help me, look on my plight. He is praying that God would take note of his situation, his desperate condition, and come to his rescue. And then he also prays, come quickly, O my God, to help me. He is praying that God would not delay, that God would not take his time, as it were, that he would come rapidly, quickly to help him. And in verse 5, he broadens his prayer. David says, punish all the nations and show no mercy to wicked traitors. Wicked traitors. These are people who once perhaps embraced the Lord and they were on David's team, but now have turned against David and against David's God. And he also prays in verse 11, let the wicked roam around and then bring them down. Don't kill them instantly, David is praying. Why? Because God's people will then soon forget what God has done. So let these wicked enemies run like fugitives before God eventually will bring them down. And he gives us the main reason for his prayer. And this is very important to notice in verse 13. So that the whole earth will know that you are God. That was David's main concern, that the whole world should come to know his God. And through these acts of God, that the world will recognize the uniqueness of the God of Israel. We find something very similar when David prayed in 1 Samuel 17 and verse 46, when he confronted the mighty giant Goliath. And David says, I'm going to bring you down with God's help so that the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. So we can learn from David's prayer that the whole world should come to know that there is one true living God, and that's the God of the Bible. And that prayer should forever be upon our lips. Amen.